The Solution to Mental Health Problem by Venerable Rung Ruang Pa Pa Saro. All kinds of the crisis of evil doing such as mass shooting, social violence and disruption, racism, violent protest, etc. All of these evil doing are the growing indication of mental health problems. The issue of mental health problems receives tremendous attentions from public interests. Many people are trying to resolve this mental health crisis, which is considered as the most important concern. In the past, the modern physiology will limit the scope of study of mental health only on the extreme case of mental disorder in terms of the abnormality of mind function. However, since the spreading of the large number of mental health crises nowadays, it is clearly the scope of mental health problem study must be expanded to the broader definition due to the fact that the mental health problem can arise with emotional impulse to anyone. For example, in such a stress financial environment, we may easily experience with some kinds of depression and anxiety in everyday life, and since it is contained by law and regulations, therefore it is like a time bomb waiting for explosion sometime in the future. Apparently, the mental health problems are something that are unnoticeably getting much close to all of us, since it can happen anywhere and any time. It is not until recently that the study on the mind receives much interest in the West, especially the issue on the mental health. From Buddhist perspective, the mind is the origin that instructed all kinds of doing to the world. Therefore, the wholesome mind will do wholesome speech and action to the world, while the unwholesome mind will do unwholesome speech and action to the world. When people does something evil, it is because of the fact that mind is unwholesome. As long as the mind exhibits underlying tendency to be unwholesome, then there is always a high risk to become problem as follows.
All beings are having a serious problem. Those who do not know the truths of life within nature, so-called in ignorance. When engaging with the matter in relation to the world with the desire and lust on the five aggregates subject to clinging, then unnoticeably developing an uninstructed cognition with assumption of a self as the five aggregates of being. But since it is impermanent, not stable, and when the desire and lust on the five aggregates subject to clinging will never be fulfilled, then eventually the life will end up with suffering.
The focus of Buddhism is to study the Dharma of the truths of life within nature, and then utilizes this knowledge to liberate the mind from all kinds of problems. The simplest way to become wholesome is to abandon any arising unwholesome mind. The origin of mental health problem inside the mind is simply the symptom of the dysfunction of mind in responding to stimuli from the world and the wrong processing when the mind interfacing with stimuli from the world through the six sense bases, starting with ignorance to the world, and in the case when the mind is dominated by uninstructed cognition, then the mind will wrongly respond to the object of consciousness with ignorance. As a consequence, the mind will be struggling like burning, and this burning eventually led to greed, hatred, and delusion in the process of dependent origination as follows.
All of these interfacing processing through the six sense bases are burning. The eye is burning, forms are burning, eye consciousness is burning, eye contact is burning, and whatever feeling arises with eye contact is conditioned whether pleasant or painful or neither pleasurable nor painful, that too is burning. Burning with the fire of lust, with the fire of hatred, with the fire of delusion, burning with birth, aging, and death, with sorrow, lamentation, pain, dejection and despair. The ear is burning, the mind is burning, and then extending to all other sense bases including ear, nose, tongue, body and mind.
The mind is burned due to the dysfunction of mind processing, and in Buddhism, all kinds of mental health problems are considered as the states of mind when being contaminated by defilement. In this circumstance, the defilement acts like an error arising inside the mind, starting with a minor ignorance and then be aggravated by thinking to become serious lower fetters of sensual desire, ill will, depression, anxiety, and doubt before bursting out into evil action with greed, hatred, and delusion. The defilement or the mental health problem can be compared like the surface of ocean wave, although it may look calm, but the turbulence under the water will slowly be aggravated before hitting the shore and causing severe damage. In Buddhist studies, we can temporarily block the burst out of unwholesome mind, but it is not sustainable. The only way to resolve the mental health problem is by having a good study of what really happening inside the mind to gain the knowledge to resolve the problem by wisdom. The Venerable Sariputta generalized the definition of goodness and evil in terms of wholesome and unwholesome so that we can link what happening in the world to the mind condition. That is, the unwholesome mind would lead to unwholesome speech and action, while the wholesome was the good way of living. Then he analyzed the root cause of evil doing, and then he suggested a way to fix this problem by having a good study on the true Dharma as follows.
When, friends, a noble disciple understands the unwholesome and the root of the unwholesome, the wholesome and the root of the wholesome, in that way he is one of right view, whose view is straight, who has confirmed confidence in the Dharma and has arrived at this true Dharma. And what, friends, is the unwholesome? What is the root of the unwholesome? What is the wholesome? What is the root of the wholesome? The destruction of life is unwholesome. Taking what is not given is unwholesome. Sexual misconduct is unwholesome. False speech is unwholesome. Malicious speech is unwholesome. Harsh speech is unwholesome. Idle chatter is unwholesome. Covetousness is unwholesome. Ill will is unwholesome. Wrong view is unwholesome. This is called the unwholesome. And what is the root of the unwholesome? Greed is a root of the unwholesome. Hatred is a root of the unwholesome. Delusion is a root of the unwholesome. This is called the root of the unwholesome. And what is the wholesome? The abandon of unwholesome. Abstention from destruction of life is wholesome. Abstention from taking what is not given is wholesome. Abstention from sexual misconduct is wholesome. Abstention from false speech is wholesome. Abstention from malicious speech is wholesome. Abstention from harsh speech is wholesome. Abstention from idle chatter is wholesome. Uncovetousness is wholesome. No ill will is wholesome. Right view is wholesome. This is called the wholesome. And what is the root of the wholesome? Non-greed is a root of the wholesome. Non-hatred is a root of the wholesome. Non-delusion is a root of the wholesome. This is called the root of the wholesome. When a noble disciple has thus understood the unwholesome and the root of the unwholesome, the wholesome and the root of the wholesome, he entirely abandons the underlying tendency to lust. He abolishes the underlying tendency to aversion. He extirpates the underlying tendency to the view and conceit I am, and by abandoning ignorance and arousing true knowledge he here and now makes an end of suffering. In that way too a noble disciple is one of right view, whose view is straight, who has confirmed confidence in the Dharma and has arrived at this true Dharma.
The Venerable Sariputta elaborated that all kinds of evil and wrongdoing such as the destruction of life, taking what is not given, sexual misconduct, false speech, malicious speech, harsh speech, idle chatter, covetousness, ill will, wrong view, etc. All of these evil doing are unwholesome that are rooted from mental problems and associated with greed, hatred, and delusion which are underlined by tendency to lust, tendency to aversion, tendency to the view and conceit I am, with ignorance to the true knowledge, and the true Dharma. Once understanding that all man-made problems in the world are caused by the mental problems with greed, hatred, and delusion, then the objective of the Buddhist study is to turn the mind to be wholesome by seeing the Dharma. In Buddhism, the only way to make an end to suffering in life is by purifying the mind from defilements, and then the mind will be liberated from mental health problems. The Buddhist solution approach to the mental health problem can be systematically summarized in terms of the Four Noble Truths as follows. Firstly, we have to understand that the mental health problem is a very complex issue. It may not be as simple as it appears to be. It is usually a mixture of several combined components, and this is the reason why we have to closely look at the problem in all aspects of considerations, so that the problem can be well defined. Secondly, we have to trace back to all the related dots that connect to the root cause of problem. This can be done by performing functional and structural analysis from collective data in order to systematically map the process of dependent origination of the problem. Thirdly, we may have to set up the collective objectives or goals as a system of transition development both in terms of physical and mental achievements. And fourthly, we have to carefully develop a full action plan with detailed roadmap to accomplish the mission. It should be noticed that the application of the Four Noble Truths is not a one-time solution, that is, in dealing with complex problem, after resolve the origin of problem at one level, However, we may find out that there is another origin of inner level, then we have to apply the Four Noble Truth analysis one more time, until the finest origin of problem is found, and this is the completion of the execution of the Four Noble Truth analysis in solving complex structural problem. One of the greatest discovery of the Buddha on the day of his enlightenment is the discovery of such the knowledge of how to systematically resolve the problem to the root cause in each step of the problem as follows. The problem and solution to suffering in life. The root cause of suffering in life is the unwholesome of evil doing in life, and in this circumstance we apply social norm and law to block all kinds of evil doing. The problem and solution to the unwholesome of evil doing. The root cause of unwholesome speech and action is the unwholesome mind with greed, hatred, and delusion, and in this circumstance we apply the right view with the true Dharma to abandon the greed, hatred, and delusion, so that the mind will become wholesome. The problem and solution to unwholesome mind with greed, hatred, and delusion. The root cause of greed, hatred, and delusion is the unwholesome thoughts of the five lower fetters, including sensual desire, ill will, depression, anxiety, and doubt, and in this circumstance we apply a proper Dharma to abandon the arising unwholesome, so that the mind will become wholesome. The problem and solution to the unwholesome thoughts of the five lower fetters, including sensual desire, ill will, depression, anxiety, and doubt. The root cause of the five lower fetters are the taints of sensual desire, existence, and ignorance that arise in the process of dependent origination, and in this circumstance we apply a proper Dharma to abandon the arising unwholesome, so that the mind will become wholesome. The problem and solution to the taints. The root cause of the taints are the arising of craving, clinging, and ignorance in the process of dependent origination, and in this circumstance we perform insight observation to see the Dharma to gain insight wisdom, and then using the insight wisdom for the destruction of the taints, and then the mind will be liberated.